I've had people write me essays about how they won't be watching my show, and this is a step backwards for Canada, and it's a symbol of oppression and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, what? If you're not going to watch the show, just don't. You don't need to write me an essay about it. But also, like, before you make a judgment, like, maybe see what it's about and see how I do, and judge me for what's in my head, not what's on it.
Like, I just want to start off with going back to my very first encounter with Ginella Massa, which I actually still have the email. I have the email.
Do you really?
Oh yeah, I pulled it up. It's like, "Hi, Radianne, I'm a producer at CTV News Channel," and you were the very first person to ever even consider giving me a shot on air. You were a producer at CTV News Channel. I've never gotten an email like that. You invited me to try out on that national broadcast, to try out being a film critic on there. And Ginella, like, I got to tell you how rare of a thing that is, especially at that time, not even long after that, after years of experience being like an entertainment reporter, I still couldn't even score an interview for a job as an entertainment reporter at the Toronto Star. Wow. Like, I applied for an entertainment reporter job at the Toronto Star with all this experience, and I still didn't even get an interview. Meanwhile, I have you emailing me out of the blue saying, "Hey, you want to have a shot at being an on-air film critic?" And I sucked. I really sucked. And of course, so I didn't get the gig at that time. But
so we talked about this. Yeah. I remember that very specifically. And I was a pretty junior case producer at CTV News Channel at the time. And the thing is that there's no sort of call out for like an audition or anything like that. It's kind of on us chasers to just find someone new. And we actually had a conversation as a team. Let's try to get either a person of color or a woman. Let's try and see what we can do. And so that's how I ended up reaching out to you, because I think you were writing for Now at the time. Mm-hmm. And I also felt, you say you sucked in the audition. And I remember I was having a conversation about you were really nervous because you hadn't done TV before. And I felt it was really unfair for your audition to be live. It was like, hey, can you do the film review this week? Yeah. So I always felt it was a little unfair to kind of have you audition in that way, especially if you'd never done it before. And that's the hard part. A lot of times we're like, let's bring more people of color to these positions. But if they've never had those opportunities before, or they've never been given guidance or mentorship or any sort of training or support to succeed, then sometimes we will fail in those roles. And this is why we continue not to fill them. So I felt really bad, because I felt it wasn't a fair judgment for us to bring you in one time, your first time on air. And if you weren't that great, be like, next, right? Yeah. And so we did bring in a couple of people, and we ended up with another white man who was very lovely and very nice. And he did a great job on the show. But I felt really bad. And I was really glad when I saw that you were on CTV your morning and you gotten another shot at it.
Well, I mean, again, so like you're feeling bad about that experience, and I didn't. I got a shot and I got the experience. And from that experience, I saw what it was like. I saw the expectations. I saw the pressures. I saw the bright lights and how demanding it was. And so the next time I got a shot, I was fucking ready.
You're ready.
Like, I prepared. I knew what to expect. So that was such a crucial learning moment that I got from you. Nobody else would have given me that learning opportunity. So when the next time I got the opportunity was on air for Metro Morning, I was prepared. And then when I got the CTV's Your Morning thing, I was prepared. Yeah. So
I was so happy to see that you'd gotten a chance somewhere else, because I also didn't want you to feel down on yourself in the sense that like, oh man, I didn't get it. And then just not bother trying, because that's also what happens, right? I've talked a lot about, us not having room to fail, not having room to be mediocre, not having room to make mistakes. We have to be excellent on the one and only shot that we get, or we don't get another one. So I'm really glad that you were able to kind of continue on and get another shot.
But then like, let's turn this around then. So who gave you that shot? Because I got to tell you, first of all, when I walked into that building that day, I was surprised that you were a Muslim woman. You know, like, I
Yeah.
mean, from I mean, I didn't click into me when I saw the name Ginella Massa, but I just kind of
Yes.
said, she must be Italian.
That happened
She
a
must be,
lot in that job, I'll say.
yeah,
As a chase producer, as someone who, would pick up the phone and call guests and try to get them on the show. And it's Ginella Massa calling, and I sound like this. And then they show up at the studio looking for Ginella Massa, and it would be me. And I'd see that moment where they're like, oh, okay. So I would see that moment of surprise all the time, and actually, it was I loved seeing that moment because they didn't expect it, and it was good because I was kind of defying their expectation or defying stereotypes. So who gave me a chance? A lot of people really through my career. I've been in this industry for 10 years, almost 11, if you can believe that. And my first internship was at CTV Toronto. And the managing editor there was the one who encouraged me to apply for a mat leave position that had come up. And he was a really great mentor to me, and he was really great kind of with all the interns at teaching, because a lot of people kind of see interns as like, oh, they're here for 6 weeks and like, they're in my way and they're annoying. And but he actually would take time with interns to help train them and teach them. And he encouraged me to apply for my first job there, which was a steep learning curve. That first job as a very green journalism grad. And I was an editorial assistant at the assignment desk of like the largest local newsroom in the country. And I made a lot of mistakes there, I will tell you. I made a lot of mistakes. And I cried in my car a lot, but only in my car, never in the newsroom. That was my rule, no crying in the newsroom. So, I learned a lot from that. And then, the next person who gave me my big shot was when I went to Kitchener. And I tell this story a lot, actually, about persistence, because I applied for a job at CTV Kitchener 3 times before I got hired. And I got told no.
really?
And then the person who had told me no went on mat leave. And then there was someone else there, and I applied again, and he hired me. And funny enough, a couple months later, the woman who had turned me down came back for mat leave, and there I was. And actually, she it was a great boss as well, and was very encouraging when I left to City. And so, yeah, Kitchener took a chance on me. At City, I had, City was one of the first more diverse newsrooms that I had worked in. And that was really nice. And so I felt like I had people in my corner there when I would go into the newsroom to story meetings and pitch stuff. And I, didn't feel so alone when I would pitch things or bring up, ideas, and there'd at least be 1 or 2 other people who would kind of echo or support me in that. And they were people in managerial positions, which was unusual to have people of color in managerial positions who were kind of supporting some of the ideas and stories that I wanted to do. And now CBC. So, CBC is taking a chance on me as well. And this is a really big leap from a local newsroom to a national, program, prime time. Yeah.
Hour long?
An hour-long show, live, national program. So yeah, it's exciting. It's a little scary, but I have a lot of support in the CBC newsroom and a really great team. And that's really encouraging. I think this goes back to the story that we're talking about, the idea that if we want to give these opportunities to people of color, we have to recognize that they may not have access to the same resources, the same networks. They don't have, for me anyways, I didn't have parents who could get me, an internship or put a good word in with a colleague. Or, my parents, when I went to university, hadn't even gone to university. So, they couldn't even help me navigate that. So, sometimes we need support and resources in a way that some of our white colleagues don't. So I really appreciate that CBC has kind of really supported me in this role because it is a very daunting task.
I also want to talk about some of the challenges you've had, because it's like, because of course, yes, there's people who open the doors for you, but there's also people who looked at you like, nah, right? I mean, that's just like, we know this, we know this territory, like who are like, what are some of the kind of the obstacles you persisted, like when they assumed that you're not, especially making the leap to in front of the camera, because that's a huge leap, right? From going behind the camera to in front of the camera.
I had to bet on myself. I had to take a chance on myself. There was a moment where I did make that concerted effort in my mind to say, I'm going to now pivot my career and I want to be on air. So I'd been working as a chase producer for 3-4 years. And I was applying for jobs and I wasn't, getting any traction. As I said, I applied for CTV Kitchener twice, and they told me no. Basically, every time they told me no, I asked for feedback. So they said, you just don't have enough videography experience. They told me the first time. And so I went back, I was volunteering at Rogers TV, and I went back to Rogers TV and I said, hey, I need videography experience. Can I go out on shoots? And can I do that? And they said, yes. And so I got more VJ experience and I applied the second time. I also realized that because I had a this seemed crazy, but because I had a full-time gig as a producer, I couldn't take on any freelance part-time contract opportunities on air. And those were probably going to be the only types that were going to be offered to me as someone who was as green as I was. So I actually quit my full-time job and everyone thought I was crazy because those are hard to come by. But I said, but it's not what I want to do. So I was freelancing for 8 months. I was doing like media consulting at the same time on the side. I was freelance producing in radio. I started to get some overnight newscast shifts. I was basically working on my demo. And then I got hired at CTV Kitchener as a VJ. So yeah, I had to kind of bet on myself in that sense. And then the other thing, one piece of advice that I was given from a former broadcaster who was a teacher of mine at Seneca. She's like, you need to address the elephant in the room because, Canadians are very polite. And so no one's going to say to my face, we're not going to hire you because of your hijab, especially because there are discrimination laws in this country, right? And they're also going to be apprehensive to bring that up as a potential reservation. So she's like, you have to bring up the elephant in the room and open the door to that conversation and talk about it and find out, what are their concerns, what are their reservations, and how can you kind of help them overcome those. So that was advice that I actually took to heart and I think helped me in the interview process. And we were able to have kind of a candid conversation about it and move past that and then talk about, me as a journalist. So, throughout my career, as I said, I never got any sort of blatant remarks from anyone who was doing any hiring. I got them from other places. I actually just tweeted today. I don't know if you saw. Facebook sent me a memory 6 years ago today. And just after I'd been hired at CTV Kitchener, I posted, thank you so much for everyone for the overwhelming support. And it means a lot to me, especially because a couple of months ago, I had a conversation with a colleague who'd made a flippant remark that they'll never put a woman in hijab on TV because it's too distracting.
Right.
And in the moment, I didn't say anything. And I just kind of shrugged and smiled. But in my head, I was like, we'll see. We'll see. Yeah. And I've never forgotten that. Right. Yeah. So he's the only person who kind of had the guts to say something like that to my face. But he also didn't know that I was trying to get on air. I was working as a producer at the time. He just kind of said it in passing. And so, yeah, a lot of it is kind of like backhanded compliments and, microaggressions, but not, Canadians are pretty polite with their racism. So, I had to kind of address the elephant in the room a lot.
Well, it depends on what part of Canada you're talking about.
Yeah, in Toronto at least.
Yeah, like Alberta is another story. As soon as you start talking.
Well, I definitely, the more attention that I got about being the first woman in hijab and whatever, although the reaction was overwhelmingly positive, I did get a lot of hate online, but I realized it was mostly from people who never watched any of my news reports, never read anything I'd written. It was never a criticism about my journalism or my abilities as a journalist. It was always just a reaction to my photo and a reaction to me wearing hijab.
So then I got to ask you, we got to touch on kind of current affairs right now. In current affairs right now, everyone's looking south of the border at the stuff that went on in Capitol Hill, right? But looking back on Canada and sort of the nationalistic rhetoric that can come out of the Conservative Party, out of Erin O'Toole about Take Back Canada and all that kind of stuff. How do you hold back your opinion when you're going to be covering that stuff?
I don't think I need to give my opinion. I think that we can bring lots of people on who can talk about, some of these issues and bring in diverse voices to talk about some of these issues. So that's how I kind of approach those stories. You know, we definitely are smug in Canada to think that what's happening south of the border is an American problem. We know this kind of rhetoric is very prevalent in Canadian society, both, you know, in the fringes online in these sorts of groups and in mainstream political groups as well. So it's very much a conversation we have to be having in Canada.
Okay, so like, I mean, you talked about how, you know, you want people to see you for what's in your head and not what's on your head, right? So it's like, but like, and a lot of times, I guess we can't get it even in the headlines. We're talking about, oh, she's the first hijab wearing reporter in North America. But so beyond that, you're also one of the first primetime female hosts of color in Canada.
Yeah.
Like, you know, there's a lot of multitudes to what your identity is. So talk about who is Ginella Massa beyond the hijab.
Yeah, a lot has been made of me being the first hijab wearing news anchor in Canada, but I have a lot of other identities as well that influence how I see the world. I was born in Panama to Spanish speaking parents. I came to Canada when I was 1 with my mom. She was a single mom with 2 little girls who she didn't speak much English and didn't have a lot of money. So that's what my upbringing was like. And so that experience also informs how I, you know, see the world, what stories I think are important for us to talk about, who we should be talking to. And that identity sometimes gets erased or forgotten or not talked about as well.
Where did you grow up?
In Toronto, like North York and Scarborough.
The people you would have grown up in those specific neighborhoods, I know for a fact, look nothing like a newsroom.
That's exactly it. Like, it was shocking to me when I went into my first internship to walk into that newsroom because it looked nothing like the Toronto I grew up in, right? And I was suddenly this foreign other, and I'd never been that growing up. Being a kid wearing hijab in a public school where there were lots of Muslims and also lots of kids from many, many different backgrounds. It wasn't uncommon for me to be in a room with lots of different types of people, some who looked like me and some who didn't. So it was a very strange experience for me to walk into a newsroom and to get into this industry and suddenly be very much an other. You know, my mom actually was one of those parents who would go to the school and ask them to do an assembly for Eid or for Ramadan, or you know, have us bring treats and candies to the kids for school on Eid. And so she was always kind of encouraging us to not be ashamed of our religion and to also not feel like it was at odds with our Canadian identity. That those two things were not mutually exclusive, right? That this was a part of our identity that we could be proud of and we could celebrate, and we weren't any less Canadian for it.